When we think about what sparks a war, we usually picture things like oil, or land, or ideology. But what if the next major conflicts are fought over something we all take for granted? Water. Today, we're diving into the high-stakes battles over the world's great rivers, from the ancient Nile to the mighty Mekong, because the front line of global conflict, it's changing.
This isn't just some dramatic quote. It really gets to the heart of what we're talking about today. In a world with growing populations and a changing climate, water is shifting from a resource we all share into a potential trigger for war. So let's unpack what that really looks like on the ground.
And for the hundreds of millions of people who rely on rivers that cross borders, this isn't some far-off prediction. Water scarcity is a very real and growing threat to their jobs, their food, and their stability. This is happening right now in some of the most critical regions on the planet.
Okay, so let's start with our first case study, and it's a big one, the Nile River. For literally thousands of years, Egypt has viewed the Nile as its lifeblood. I mean, it's not just a river, it's an inheritance, something guaranteed by history itself. But that long-held dominance, it's now facing a challenge like never before.
To really get what's happening here, you've got to understand this one key idea: hydro-hegemony. It sounds complex, but it's simple. It means one country calls the shots on a shared river. And for the better part of a century, thanks to old colonial-era deals, Egypt has been the one in charge of the Nile, with the power to veto any big projects upstream. That was the reality. Until now.
So why is Egypt so fiercely protective of its position? Well, it all comes down to this one staggering number. Over 95% of Egypt's renewable water comes from the Nile. It is, and this is no exaggeration, an existential resource for a country of over 100 million people.
And this is the game changer. Ethiopia's Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, or GERD for short. It's this massive hydroelectric project, the biggest in Africa, that Ethiopia built on the Blue Nile. And that's critical, because the Blue Nile provides about 85% of all the water that flows into the main Nile River. This dam is Ethiopia's ticket to becoming a regional economic powerhouse.
So this is where it gets really tricky. You have this fundamental clash of what both countries see as their absolute rights. For Egypt, the dam is a straight-up threat to its survival. But for Ethiopia, it's their sovereign right to develop their country and pull their people out of poverty. There is almost no middle ground here.
And this isn't just an abstract threat. The numbers make it painfully clear. Think about this. Even a small, sustained drop in the Nile's flow, we're talking just 1 billion cubic meters, could wipe out over 1 million jobs in Egypt and cost their economy nearly $2 billion. And that's every single year.
Now, you might think this is a one-off situation, just a unique problem on the Nile. But it's not. Not at all. A similar drama is playing out in Southeast Asia, along the mighty Mekong River. It shows a global pattern that's becoming crystal clear. What one country does upstream has massive consequences for everyone downstream.
I mean, just look at the sheer scale of human dependency here. The Mekong isn't just a river, it's a lifeline. We're talking about food, transportation, and business for about 60 million people across these 4 nations. Entire cultures and economies are built around the river's rhythm.
And just like on the Nile, what's causing the conflict? Dam construction. A whole series of hydroelectric dams built upstream, especially by China where the river begins, is changing the natural flood cycle. That directly threatens the fishing and rice farming that millions of people depend on to survive.
This slide really lays out the geopolitical tug-of-war perfectly. You've got 2 groups with 2 completely different visions. On one side, you have the Mekong River Commission, led by the downstream guys, who are all about cooperation and sustainability. On the other side, you have the China-led Lancang-Mekong Cooperation, which is focused on one thing: economic growth and building more infrastructure, like more dams.
Okay, so we've talked about rivers, but this struggle for resources isn't just about fresh water. It's also about what's in the water. In the South China Sea, the collapse of fish stocks is turning peaceful fishing grounds into militarized flashpoints, and it's making tensions between countries that already disagree on territory even worse.
Just take a second and really look at these numbers. This is staggering. In just 20 years, fish populations in the South China Sea have crashed by as much as 75%. This isn't just a slow decline, it's a catastrophic collapse of a food source that millions rely on.
So what happens when the nets keep coming up empty? Well, the situation gets ugly fast.
Fishermen from places like Vietnam and the Philippines are pushed farther and farther out into contested waters, leading to direct showdowns with rival boats and, often, the heavily armed Chinese Coast Guard. Tragically, these clashes have led to hundreds of civilian deaths and are escalating military standoffs.
So we've got the Nile, the Mekong, and the South China Sea. What's the common thread here? It's a complete breakdown of diplomacy, a breakdown of the rules. In every single one of these crises, old agreements are being tossed aside, and countries just can't or won't agree on new ones.
And the GRD dispute? Man, it is a masterclass in diplomatic failure. I mean, just look at this timeline. It all started in 2011, when Ethiopia just began building. Sure, there was a declaration of principles in 2015, but it kicked all the hard questions down the road. Talks led by the US fell apart. Even the UN Security Council couldn't get a binding deal. And now the dam is a fact on the ground, fully operational, with absolutely no rules in place.
You can just feel the exhaustion and the fear in this statement from Egypt's foreign ministry. After nearly a decade of failed negotiations, no solution is in sight and water insecurity in Egypt looms. For them, this isn't just diplomatic talk. It's a warning about a danger they feel the world has completely ignored.
And this right here, this is why everything is stuck. Egypt is demanding a legally binding treaty that says exactly how the dam will be operated, especially during a drought. But Ethiopia has been pushing for flexible guidelines that, well, they could change whenever they want. That single disagreement has paralyzed the whole process.
So where does all of this leave us? Well, with diplomacy totally stalled, and the stakes higher than they've ever been, the situation on the Nile, and in other places like it, is getting really, really dangerous.
And as if the political standoff wasn't tense enough, now there's a new, very physical fear. Recent satellite images have shown cracks forming on part of the GERD's structure. This is raising serious questions about the dam's safety, and it poses a direct threat of catastrophic flooding to millions of people who live downstream.
You know, a recent analysis summed it up perfectly, and frankly, chillingly. That is not a recipe for compromise. That is a recipe for catastrophe. The warning is clear. When countries believe their very survival is on the line, there's no room to back down, and that pushes everyone closer to a disastrous outcome.
And that's the question we're all left with, isn't it? If these countries could work together, the benefits would be huge for everyone, from trading electricity to managing floods. And yet, the path they seem to be on leads in the exact opposite direction. It really makes you wonder, in this world of shrinking resources, is conflict now simply inevitable?